Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Ariana, and today I'm going to be sharing one of my beef stew recipes with you. I mean, what a better way to start the fall season than with some beef stew, am I right? So let's get started. So to get started, you're going to need a large mixing bowl, about 2 pounds of beef stew meat, some all-purpose flour, and then I'm going to show you some extra virgin olive oil that we're actually going to be using a little later to put in the cast iron skillet. So right now what you're going to do is unpackage the beef stew meat and place it into the large mixing bowl. So what I'm doing now is just washing my hands as I have put all the meat into the mixing bowl, and we'll be moving on to the next step, which is sprinkling some all-purpose flour over the meat and making sure that it is mixed well. Now that I've sprinkled the flour on top, I'm just going to go ahead and toss the meat in the bowl, making sure that all sides of the meat are covered with flour. Again, don't forget to wash your hands after doing this step as you've been touching raw meat. Now for the seasoning of the meat, I'm going to start off with using some onion powder, and for my dry seasonings I usually just eyeball it. It just depends on how you like your flavoring. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some coarse salt, and then we're going to go ahead and add some fresh pepper. So now that the meat is seasoned, I'm going to go ahead and heat up my cast iron skillet. And to do this, I'm just going to be putting it on a high-medium temperature, and I'm going to be adding some olive oil to the pan. So now we're going to add our seasoned meat to the pan. You can tell your pan is hot enough once the oil starts to smoke a little bit, and once you place the meat into the pan, you'll hear it sizzle. Now that the meat is cooking, I'm just stirring it occasionally, and then I'm just going to make sure that it is somewhat of a flat layer so that all of the meat is being cooked. So as the meat is cooking, I'm going to gather the rest of my ingredients that I need and start chopping the produce that I'm going to be adding in the beef stew. So what I used was 2 yellow onions, some garlic. I really love garlic, so I always make sure to put extra, but you can add as much or as little garlic as you prefer to this recipe. We're also going to need some beef stew. I always get 50% less sodium as we add some salt to the meat and some seasonings that do have salt in it already. The next thing we'll need is some tomato paste, Italian seasoning, some maple syrup, some Worcestershire sauce. I'm not really sure if I pronounced that right, but if I didn't, that's alright. Let's move on. You're going to need some salt and some fresh ground pepper as well. Now that we have most of our ingredients together, I'm going to go ahead and start chopping the onions and garlic. You're just going to want to make sure that the onions are diced. So before I go ahead and mince my garlic, I'm just going to take the meat that is cooked off the heat and put it into the mixing bowl. And don't you worry, I did wash the mixing bowl before putting the meat back into it. Come on now, don't be nasty. Now for the skillet, you want to make sure that you leave it on the stovetop, as you will be coming back to it again. Make sure to leave all that crusted meat yumminess at the bottom of the pan. is pushing my knife against the garlic. This is just going to allow the garlic to peel easier, and then I'm going to go ahead and chop a little bit of the ends off so that the shell of the garlic will come right off. So now that my garlic is fully peeled, I'm going to go ahead and start to slice it. The reason I slice my garlic is because I like the flavor of the garlic and having some chunks in there. For this recipe though, you can go ahead and mince the garlic as well. Was bring all of my ingredients over to the stovetop just so that they're all near me and easy to access throughout cooking this meal. So what I'm doing here is just adding the sliced onions to the hot skillet, and I'm going to cook them until they are translucent. Once all of the onions are added to the pan, I'm just going to go ahead and stir them occasionally just to make sure that they cook on all sides and don't burn. So as you can see here, the onions are starting to become slightly translucent. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix them a little bit, and now I'm going to go ahead and add the sliced garlic to the pan with the onions. So now we're going to take 2 teaspoons of the dry Italian seasonings and sprinkle that onto the onion and garlic mixture. So then we're going to go ahead and add the tomato paste into the mixture as well. I start off by using a tablespoon, but as you can tell, it was really hard to get the tomato paste out of, so I went ahead and just used a spoon, and then later you'll see that I end up just using the spoon to scrape the entire can out. Then I went ahead and added the red cooking wine. You can use any red wine that you prefer. This is just what I like using, and you're going to take a cup of it and add it to the mixture as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 cups of beef broth to the mixture, and just make sure that you do shake your broth before using it, just to make sure that everything in there is being mixed in together. We're going to go ahead and add 1 tablespoon of the Worcestershire sauce. Again, don't knock me for mispronouncing it. If I did, I mean, come on, seriously? Who really knows how to say it? Now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. This maple syrup was actually something we got in Vermont, and it's the best maple syrup I've ever had in my life. Now I'm just adding some coarse salt and fresh pepper to the mix, and I'm just eyeballing this. You want to make sure you don't put too much salt, just because you did have the beef broth that did have some sodium in it. Now that all the ingredients are put together, you're going to want to mix it all, bring it to a simmer, and then remove it from the heat. So now we're coming back to the cutting board, and we're going to be chopping our celery and carrots. I'm using 4 stalks of celery, and I'm going to go ahead and rinse them, come back to the cutting board, and chop the ends and the tips off. for the celery, we're just going to go ahead and slice them into smaller chunks. Now that the celery is chopped, I'm going to go ahead and take a handful of carrots, rinse them, and we're going to go ahead and chop them into little chunks as well. Now we're moving on to our potatoes. I have 4 medium to large white potatoes here, and I'm going to go ahead and just rinse them off, peel them, and then we're going to go ahead and chop them. Now that my potatoes are peeled and washed, I am going to slice them into chunks. Now for the final steps, we're going over to our crock pot and we're going to go ahead and add our first ingredient, which is the meat. Once we add the meat, we're going to go ahead and add the potatoes, our carrots and celery, and we're going to make sure that those cover the top. And then we're going to go ahead and add that delicious sauce we cooked up earlier. Now that that delicious sauce is added to the crock pot, I just go ahead and mix some of my vegetables in just to make sure that they're coated well. I also go ahead and add some more beef broth just to thin up the sauce a little bit so that it works its way down to the bottom so that the meat can soak up more of the flavor. Now that our beef stew is all put together, it's ready to cook. So I'm going to go ahead and put the crock pot on high for 4 hours, and I'm going to make sure to stir it occasionally. While our beef stew cooks in the crock pot, I'm going to go ahead and make our side dish. I'm going to be serving the beef stew over a homemade bed of mashed potatoes. So to start off the homemade mashed potatoes, I'm just going to take a pot of water, add some olive oil, salt, and pepper to the water, and bring that to a boil. is boiling, I'm going to go ahead and add the peeled, washed potatoes to the boiling pot of water. Go ahead and let those potatoes boil for a while until they're nice and soft. Once the potatoes are done, we're just going to go ahead and drain the water out. Now that potatoes are done cooking, I just go ahead and season them to my liking. Again, I just go ahead and eyeball this. I do add some butter, salt, ground black pepper, some sour cream, and milk. I definitely love adding sour cream to my homemade mashed potatoes. I just feel like it gives it a more creamy flavor. If you decide to not add sour cream to your mashed potatoes, that's totally okay. You can definitely sub this out. I would just add a little bit more milk. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mash everything in together. Now that the potatoes are mashed, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of onion powder and garlic powder and mix those in. Now that our food is cooked, I'm going to go ahead and serve Gabe and I our dinner, and it's time to eat. I did forget to mention earlier in the video that I did add bay leaves to the crock pot. They just give the beef stew a little bit more flavor, but this is something you definitely don't have to add if you don't want to. I'm just mentioning this now because you will see later that I do take one out of one of the bowls. One thing that is great about them is the flavor, but who wants to accidentally eat a bay leaf? Not me. But anyways, that's it for today's video. If you want to see more videos like this one, make sure to comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that bell button to turn on post notifications so that you're notified every time a new video goes up. Bye guys!